Hi guys, welcome to the online workshop of critical reasoning, and today I'm going to cover a course of action. In this tutorial we will be talking about a couple of rules which are quite important as far as course of action is concerned. So the rules that I've mentioned here, right, it will help you to crack right from CAT exam till CET, that's Maharashtra one, or the IBPS, or rather I would say that any exam which has course of action, you'll be able to knock it off with around about 100% accuracy. Let's move ahead with the important rules. Now, the first and the foremost important rule as far as course of action is concerned, it is immediate. Okay, so whatever answer or whatever question that you have and the solution that you want to mark, right, it must be immediate. So let's take an example. So say there is an event which is, say, somebody has actually met with an accident. All right, so what can be the course of action? So the first would be the first aid that needs to be applied on the person. Then calling his parents, then probably updating his friends or something like that, like we can put it etc. and something like that. Right now, here if you look at on a normal level, right, logically, ethically, everything is important. However, if you want to kind of get a good score in course of action, you must look at the option which is the immediate one. So here the immediate one is the first aid. So any course of action, if you want to mark an answer, that option must be an immediate one. So anything that is later on need not to be marked as an answer for course of action. So immediate is the most important rule that you need to keep in mind before you proceed with the course of action. Now let's move ahead with the second rule which we have. Alright, so the second rule here is basically it should not result into any new problem. So you need to kind of keep in your mind that course of action that you choose, right, it should not result into any new problem. So any sentence, okay, any option given into your statement, if you feel that okay, this might lead to any another problem, this might solve the existing one, the problem which is mentioned in the question, but may result into some new problem, then that cannot be course of action. So I mean, like just kind of ignore that option or reject it. Should not be extreme. Now, how do you identify the extreme options? The options which are extreme, for example, let's take an example. Say, okay, so say if there is a terrorist attack, okay, so what should be the option? So if you have any option which says that okay, India should retaliate and India should get into war with Pakistan, there should be immediate action, we should deploy all the commandos and all that, I think that's kind of a bit extreme answer. Okay, that's number one. And number two, what you can have is, say for example, any option which says only, okay, any option which says must. So whenever you see these kind of words which have been mentioned, right, your answer cannot be that option. So any option which has only must, these are the extreme options, should not be counted as the course of action. No personal opinion. And most of the time, we have our personal opinions and we believe that this should be the answer. For example, what I just said to you, right? If there is an attack from the enemy country, a lot of people will feel that countries should retaliate. We should give them the answer. We should deploy the commandos and all that. So this is basically a personal. That's number one. Number two can be a case wherein you might have a course of action and you might feel that doing this makes a lot of sense, but that's your personal opinion. Then those kind of questions, rather those kind of options, cannot be taken as course of action. Now, emotional stuff, like any option which is emotional, should not be a course of action. A course of action should be the one which is predominantly fact-based. So let's take an example. So say for example, if your question says that, all right, so India GDP will be, say India will be superpower by say 2020. Okay, it's just a plain statement. I mean, there is no valid point in this. So if you say India should be superpower by 2020, but if there is a statement which says that okay, if you look at on a world level, any country which has GDP 7% plus can achieve a status of superpower in next 3 to 4 years. So when you have this kind of fact-based kind of sentences, or sentences which comes with the proof or comes with justification, can definitely be course of action. So anything which is based on the fact should be a course of action. It should not be an advice, right? So say for example, government says, so say there is a bank, okay, so there is a bank which is what they're trying to sack their employees, okay, and so there is a course of action which says that government says, according to the government, they should not be sacking the employees. Now, whatever this statement is, this is nothing but it's a mere advice. So anything which has an advice involved into it can never be the course of action, that's for sure. And you will get a lot of times these kind of statements in your question wherein you may see the advice, and a lot of time people do mark it as an option, okay, as an course of action. Now sometimes there might be a question, or rather there might be a a statement wherein, say, Mr. X advised Mr. Y to do something. So say for example, let's take an example. Say Mr. Y has been coughing from last, say, not about 30 days, okay? So, and Mr. X advised him to go and do the checkup, like maybe a blood checkup or something like that, to understand if there is any problem, major health issues that he has. Now this kind of an advice is logical. This kind of an advice is basically a fact-based, because yeah, definitely we know these medical terms, right? So this kind of things can be a course of action. So you need to be a little bit careful. It is not necessary that if the advice word has been mentioned in here, then it might not be the course of action. No, if the advice has been mentioned, then you need to read it, understand it. These kind of questions, rather these kind of statements are quite popular in bank PO domain and Maharashtra CET domain, right? So you might get these things quite often. Then something called as should not be a comparison. So anything that you see, right, there is a comparison. So for example, if we talk about demon, yeah, so should government of India go for demonetization? And one statement first says that, oh no, we should not be going because USA has never done, or China has never done any kind of a demonetization. So whenever you compare, right, comparison can never be a course of action. So any statement that shows the course of action should be out directly. Anything which is universal or logical can definitely be course of action. Anything which is universally proven, anything which is scientifically been proven, and anything which is logic should be a course of action. Say for example, you're thirsty, have some water. It's a logic thing, right? So anything which is universally done, anything which is logically done will definitely be a course of action. It should not be impractical. Something which is not practically doable cannot be a course of action. Absolutely. Though it solves the problem, but it is not practically doable, cannot be an answer. Fine. Assumption. This is something again you will get a lot of times in your paper. Certain things are based on assumption. So any statement in course of action, if it's based on purely an assumption, that kind of a course of statement will never be a course of action. Right? So that's something you need to keep in your mind. Coming back to the universal again, let me tell you, anything which has been universally proven, say, sun rises at east, right? That's again, it's an universal thing. You cannot challenge it, okay? And that is the reason it is a course of action. Fine. Now, should not be an optional. So definitely, I mean, anything which is optional can never be a course of action. So anything, any solution which is given out here, maybe statement 1 or statement 2, if it's an optional thing, should not be a course of action. That comes treat individually. And this is very important actually. Now, what happens is, say you have statement 1 and say you have statement 2, right? You might get more than that also. Now, what students do, basically, they try to read both the statements together and they kind of think about both the statements together. That's absolutely wrong. Now, that is not something you should be doing. You should be treating both the statements individually. Now, let me give you a quick example. Now, rather, I'm going to give you, this is a very important example, listen to me very carefully. So, say there is a traffic jam, okay, so there is a traffic jam. It is because some truck out there has, broken down. So, you have a road out here and there is a truck which has been broken down and there is a problem. Now, your statement 1 says, you divert the traffic, okay, you divert the traffic, and your statement 2 says, take that truck off from the road. So you have these two statements out here. Now, what people do is basically they try to read both the options together, and most of the time, even if you give it a thought, your answer will be both. You might say that, yeah, definitely both is working out. The answer should be both. It's not like that. Always remember, your course of action should be treated individually. And that's where you need to understand, or rather you need to ask your question, if I apply option number 1, will I get the solution to my problem? So let's do this here. So if I divert the traffic, so if this is the road, probably if I divert the traffic, right, will the traffic problem be solved? Yes, this is your course of action. Second, okay, if I remove the truck from there, if the police authorities, if the traffic police authorities remove this truck from there, Will this solve the problem? Answer is yes, definitely. Now again, people here will do a lot of assumption. Okay, sir, it is not possible to remove the truck because we don't know, how long it's gonna take. It usually takes 5 hours, 6 hours, maybe a day. But we don't know, what it is. Maybe an accident that must have happened in Japan when things are quite, fast enough. So you don't have to assume that, the truck cannot be removed, in 3 or 4 hours and the traffic will be jammed till that point in time. No, that's wrong. So you don't know, so you will not be actually doing any assumption on it. Now, when you actually treat them individually, when you treat them separately, the answer will be both, in your opinion. But actually the answer is either. Why either? Because you do either of these two options, you are getting a solution. So try and understand, most of the time people do not mark either as an option because they try to treat both the option together, which is absolutely wrong. Anything which is unbiased can be a course of action. Rather, your course of action must be unbiased. It should not be biased towards any committee, should not be biased towards any country, any caste, any religion, any gender, so on and so forth. Then comes the root cause. This is the again most important point. This is again something that people, rather students, get confused lot of time. Let me cite an example out here. So say there is this bank, okay, and the bank is running into the losses, okay, because of which they are sacking their employees. They are kind of reducing the number of employees. Now you have an option which is number 1, which says that, okay, sack your employees, but you should give them a benefit. Rather, kind of you give them 1 month, salary or something like that. Number 2, try to, give them the IJP, which is, say, internal job posting. And option 3 says that, RBI should investigate in this whole matter. Now, most of the time, rather most of the people out here, they will kind of, go ahead with benefit and IGP and all the stuff. But guys, that's not the case. See, try and understand what is the problem out here. The main problem is not sacking your employees. That's the byproduct of the main problem. What's the main problem? The main problem is losses, right? So an RBI committee must be set up to understand why the bank went into the losses at the first place. Now, once you understand why bank went into the losses, then your course of action will be valid. Now, marking option number 1 and option number 2 will address your second problem, which is the byproduct of the major problem, which is losses. So always remember, you need to understand what is the root cause. Now, the second point is that whenever you kind of choose any statement as a course of action, that course of action statement must either solve or minimize or reduce the intensity of the problem. So any option which does this job of solving, minimizing or reducing the intensity of the problem definitely will be a course of action. Then comes committee report. Now this is one of the important stuff. A lot of time they kind of tell you, rather they give you the option wherein committee report submission has been talked about. Now here you need to understand, for predominantly for IBPS and CT kind of exam, this is something you need to be really careful about. So say for example, there is a company, okay, and there is a boss in that company, and the boss says that it is your responsibility to train the staff in next 7 days, okay, and you fail to do so, right? At least there is an option, there is statement number 1, which is that a proper kind of investigation report or proper reasoning report must be submitted to the boss, mentioning why the training did not take place at a first go. So this kind of thing wherein you have already been directed to do something, but that thing did not happen. In this case, if you have anything to do with the report submission or anything to do with this, that will definitely be a course of action. Then if you say there was a terrorist attack on the country, right, then if you need to put up a committee or you need to set up a committee which will do the investigation, anything to do with the security of nation in the interest of the nation, and if you say that the report needs to be submitted, will definitely be an answer. Fine. Now let's take some example wherein say there was a cricket match, there was a night cricket match that was happening, and there happened a riot. Okay, now in this case we say that committee should be set up and there should be an investigation report that needs to be submitted. Now this cannot be a proper course of action because this is going to be a time consuming thing and this is actually not needed also. But yes, if they say that report needs to be submitted in next 3 days or in next 7 days, so in this case anything which is time bound, right, anything which is time bound will definitely be a course of action. So guys, this is what you need to remember. All these 17 beautiful points you need to remember. Trust me, if you apply these points, I can assure you 100% accuracy in all the exams that you appear for. Now what I'm going to do is, now we are going to go ahead and we're going to take some questions of course of action, and we will definitely try to apply all these points on the actual questions of CET and other exams also. Alright, so let's do some questions now. Statement number 1. Lack of coordination between the university, its colleges and various authorities has resulted in students outstate from one college seeking migration to the another one. Okay, now understand the main problem out here. This is something to do with the students obviously. Now if you look at the course of action out here, it says if a student is outstate from a college, the information should be sent to all the other college of the university. Okay, the admissions to all the colleges of the university should be handled by the university directly. Now this is too much because the problem is not that great access, so you don't have to kind of go ahead with this. Okay, now here is a one more rule I would say, something called as hyperbola. Hyperbola is basically exaggeration. If there is anything which has been exaggerated a lot, that cannot be your course of action, so keep that thing in your mind as well. A separate section should be made for taking strict action against students. See, now what's the problem here? Strict action against students indulging in antisocial activities. Number 1, we are not talking about, or rather the main statement doesn't really talk about anything about the antisocial activities. Also, taking a strict action against student is again something to do with the extreme course of action, which will not be followed absolutely. So by default your answer will be option number 1. So only one follows. Fair enough. Second option, let's move on with the second question. All right, let's look at the question number 2. 27,000 bonded laborers identified and freed are still awaiting rehabilitation. All right, more cases of bonded laborers should be identified. Okay, this is out of the context, so this cannot be your answer. Okay, this is out, so 1 is out. All right, let's move ahead. Till the proper rehabilitation facilities are available, the bonded laborers should not be freed. Okay, the impediments in the way of speedy and proper rehabilitation of bonded laborers should be removed. Okay, the impediments in the way of speedy and proper rehabilitation of bonded laborers should, okay, perfect. So this should be your answer, because see the problem is that if you look at here, now what's happening is basically the rehabilitation is still awaiting. Okay, and that is the problem. So by default the solution will be speed it up, right? So speedy is the answer. So yeah, only third will follow. All right, great. Let's move ahead. Let's move ahead. Number of dropouts from the municipal schools has significantly increased after withdrawal of midday meal scheme. Okay, so the problem is with the okay, so the number of dropouts. Okay, so this is a good question. So you have withdrawal of midday meal, that's the problem, and the dropout is, this is the primary, withdrawal of midday meal is the secondary one. All right, the government should reconsider its decision of withdrawal of midday meal scheme. Okay, the government should close down some of the municipal schools. Bullshit, this is not an answer. The government should carry out a detailed study to find out the reasons for school dropouts. Okay, fair enough. Now, if you look at this option, option number 1, the government should reconsider its decision of withdrawal midday meal scheme. Why? If you look at this, number of dropouts from the school has significantly after, okay, after, fine. So the withdrawal of midday meal is a primary problem. This is going to be a secondary problem. So definitely you need to address your primary problem, that again, they should be reconsidered, that if people have left the school, then why not to reconsider their option? So this is going to be your answer for sure. Then comes the third one. The government should carry out a detailed study to find out the reasons for school dropouts. Now you might be a little surprised that why there needs to be a detailed study, because the dropouts are because of the withdrawal of midday meal. But for the fact it says that there should be a detailed study. Now if you go back to my explanation when we talked about report and all that stuff, right? So because of that, it becomes a little important that government should consider this and go ahead with a detailed study to find out the reasons for the school dropout, and that is the reason this will also be considered. So your option will be number 1 and number 3. So C is the option basically. Let's move ahead. There has been unprecedented increase in the prices of essential commodities during the past few days due to the strike call given by the Transporters Association. Okay, Transporters Association should be ordered by the government to immediately withdraw strike. Okay, makes sense. Or else they will face severe consequences. This is extreme, cannot be the answer. The government should immediately make alternative arrangements to ensure adequate supply of essential commodities in the market. Okay, fair enough. The government should immediately declare the strike illegal and put all these responsible people behind the bars. Again, it's an extreme one. That's wrong. Only second follows. What options we have? 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 1, all of the above. So yeah, your answer is none of these. Fair enough. Let's move ahead. What do we have? A large number of students studying in municipal school could not pass 10th standard board examination, causing frustration among the students and their parents. The municipal authority should immediately review the position and initiate measures to improve the situation. Advice cannot be the course of action. The municipal authority should immediately fill up the teachers' vacancies in the municipal school. Again, out of the context, it has nothing to do with the teachers as such. The municipal authority should close down some of their school. Again, this is like nonsense, right? This cannot be the answer. None of these here. Yes, none of these is your answer. Perfect. All right, let's move ahead. Okay, let's take another question quickly. Many private banks have reduced interest rate on housing loans in comparison to public sector banks. Great. The case should be raised before the regulatory authority for investigation by the public sector banks, as they cannot follow such reduction. Now, this is nonsense. This is illogical. Cannot be the answer. Public sector banks must adopt, extreme, cannot be the answer. The public sector banks should advertise their special feature repeatedly so that they do not lose their future customers. Again, this is wrong. Special features about what is not been mentioned. Answer should be none of this. That's where you have the answer. That's great. I think so. Guys, to kind of sum this up today, as far as course of action is concerned, I hope you now understood. If you have any questions, you can put a comment of the video. But yeah, these are the main important points that you have. Even if you kind of do this, revise these points, understand them, make a note of these points, try to apply this, on the questions or maybe in your mock papers. I think you should be very well sorted as far as your course of action is concerned. So guys, this is all from my side. Do let me know if there is anything that I can help you with. Yeah, thank you so much.